Hi everyone, welcome back to Deep Dive Daily. Okay, so today we are tackling a huge cultural idea, the alpha male. You've totally heard the term, but I bet you don't know the wild story of where it came from, and, get this, why the science it's based on is completely and totally wrong. I mean, we've all seen it a million times, right? In movies, TV shows, all over the internet. This idea that in every group there's this one dominant top dog, an alpha who just rules through pure force and aggression. It's sold to us as this, fundamental law of nature. But what if I told you that the entire scientific basis for that idea is basically a big misunderstanding? Yeah. The real story of how power and social success work, even in the animal kingdom, is so much more interesting and complex than that myth. Okay, let's dive in and unpack this. Here's our roadmap. We're going to look at where this whole myth even started, what the science actually says about wolves and our primate cousins, and then we'll wrap up by talking about what it all means for us. So to really get why this whole alpha thing is so off base, we have to go back, way back to the very beginning. It's a pretty wild story involving chickens, some very stressed out wolves in a zoo, and one best-selling book that just changed everything. So it all kicks off in the early 1900s, with a scientist watching chickens and coming up with the term pecking order. Fast forward to the 40s, when a guy named Rudolf Schenkel studies a bunch of unrelated wolves all crammed together in a zoo, a super stressful, totally unnatural environment. He sees them fighting all the time and calls the top dogs alpha animals. But here's the real kicker. In 1970, a scientist named Dave Meck writes this massively popular book, The Wolf. He cites that flawed zoo study, and boom, the idea of the alpha just explodes into pop culture. And this is where the story takes a huge turn. Because once scientists, including Dave Meck himself, actually got the chance to study wolves out in the wild in their natural habitat, they realized that first study had it all wrong. You're looking at a quote from Dave Meck. Yeah, the same guy who helped make the term alpha famous. His later research totally flipped the script. He found out that a real wolf pack in the wild isn't some random cage match of individuals fighting for dominance. And this slide really shows you the night and day difference. The captive wolves in that original study, you can think of it like a prison yard, a bunch of strangers forced to live together, which of course led to constant fighting. But in the wild, a pack is just a family. The so-called alphas are literally just mom and dad, and the rest of the pack are their kids. It's all about cooperation and taking care of each other. So that whole dramatic image of a young wolf fighting its dad for control of a pack, it's pure fiction. It just doesn't happen. When the young wolves are old enough, they just leave home to start their own families. It's way less Game of Thrones and a lot more just, growing up and moving out. Okay, so the whole wolf analogy is officially busted. But you might be thinking, what about our closer relatives, primates? Let's take a look at chimpanzees, because what scientists have found there is honestly just as surprising. We share a mind-blowing 98.7% of our DNA with chimpanzees. That makes them an incredible mirror for us to understand social dynamics, including our own. And what we see in their world is way, way more nuanced than just the strongest guy wins. You know, in the chimp world, being alpha isn't really a personality type. It's more like a temporary job title, and it's definitely not just about being the biggest or the strongest. To get to the top, a chimp has to be a super savvy politician. He has to build alliances, show empathy, share food, and keep his friendships strong. In fact, sometimes the alpha isn't even the chimp leading the group. And if you think chimps are complex, check this out. We also have bonobos. They're just as closely related to us, but their societies are often female-led, and they're famous for resolving conflicts with social bonding and sex, not with violence. It's a powerful reminder that there's no single alpha playbook in nature. So the animal kingdom doesn't really give us this simple, aggressive alpha blueprint. It gives us this beautiful, complicated mix of different social strategies. So what does that mean for us? Where does that leave humanity in all this? Well, when researchers study human cultures, they find there are really two main ways people gain influence. There's dominance, which is power through fear and intimidation, but what's way more common and usually more valued is prestige. That's when you gain influence because you have skills or knowledge and you're generous about sharing it. You earn respect. You don't demand it through fear. And I really want to come back to Dave Meck for a second, because this quote just says it all. It really gets to the heart of what good science is. He got so frustrated that his old, outdated work was being misused that he actually fought to get his own best-selling book taken out of print. How amazing is that? He chose to correct the record, and that is such a powerful lesson. So at the end of the day, we aren't wolves in a zoo or chimps fighting for status. We have this pretty unique ability to reflect on things, to learn, and to choose how we act and what we decide to value. The science is crystal clear. The simple alpha male idea is just a myth. So the real question isn't what the animals do, it's what kind of society do we choose to build? Hit that like button if you enjoyed this, share it around, and subscribe for more. Drop a comment below with your views.